Hey, before we start the story, please subscribe to the channel to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Leave a like and comment below where you're listening from, too. Now take a deep breath and watch until the end if you dare. They say your first night in the ICU changes you, but they never tell you it can follow you home. Whispering through the hum of your fridge, flickering in the corner of your mirror, I thought I was there to save lives. I didn't know some souls don't want to be saved. The first thing I noticed when I walked into the ICU wasn't the smell of disinfectant. It was the silence. Not peace. Not calm. A heavy, suffocating silence that seemed to watch me back. It was my first night as a registered ICU nurse at St. Crescent Hospital, a place that looked alive during the day but felt like a mausoleum after midnight. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The air conditioning hissed like something breathing just behind my shoulder, and every monitor pulsed to its own rhythm. A digital heartbeat echoing in the dark. They'd told me night shifts were quieter. They didn't tell me why. My preceptor, Dr. Hassan, greeted me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Welcome to the night side of medicine," he said. "Try not to listen too closely to the machines. They tend to remember things." I laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. The patient in Bay 4 had been there for weeks. No visitors, no records anyone could find before her admission. The staff whispered her name like a curse, Mrs. Farzana Malik. "Coma?" they said. But when I looked at her, I swear she looked back. That was the night I learned some patients never really leave. Some stay, trapped between the beep of a monitor and the breath of a ventilator, waiting for someone foolish enough to listen. The automatic doors hissed open like the exhale of a machine that never slept. I remember the smell first, antiseptic sharpness mixed with something metallic beneath it. Like the air after lightning. The hospital was a world of its own at night, humming with the quiet rhythm of machines that measured life by the second. I'd been assigned to the night shift in the ICU, my first night, my first real test. I told myself I was ready. I had trained for this. But as soon as I stepped through those doors, I felt something was off. The air was too still. The kind of stillness that presses against your chest, heavy and watching. "Night shift?" the receptionist asked, her eyes barely leaving her screen. "Yeah, ICU. I'm new." She gave a quick nod, slid a clipboard toward me. "Sign in. You'll be in Bay 4. Talk to Dr. Hassan. He's on tonight." They've been short-staffed since. She trailed off as if catching herself. "Since last month." "Since what?" I asked. Her eyes flicked up briefly. "You'll hear about it. They all do." The ICU was colder than the rest of the hospital. Each bay sealed behind glass doors. Monitors pulsing with steady green and amber lights, little heartbeats of the machines that guarded the fragile line between life and death. Bay 4 was at the far end, half hidden by a shadow that the fluorescent lights couldn't quite reach. Dr. Hassan met me there looking exhausted. "You must be Aisha?" "Right. New grad?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Try not to let the night scare you too much." He gave a humorless chuckle, then handed me a chart. "Your patient's name is Mrs. Farzana, 62, admitted 3 days ago. Complications after cardiac surgery. Her vitals are stable, but she's not responding. We keep her sedated." "Is she in a coma?" "Medically induced." "But," he hesitated, "sometimes she reacts. Just keep an eye on her. Don't panic if you see strange readings." The monitors glitch sometimes in Bay 4. He left before I could ask what he meant. At first, the shift was uneventful. I checked the IV lines, charted her vitals, adjusted the sedation pump. The rhythmic beep, beep, beep of the cardiac monitor became almost hypnotic. I told myself I was fine. I even started humming softly, an old lullaby my mother used to sing. Then, around 2:47 a.m., the monitor flattened for exactly 3 seconds. B-E-E. My heart jumped. I ran to her side. Her skin was pale, almost waxy, but her chest still rose and fell. I tapped the monitor, thinking it was the glitch Dr. Hassan had mentioned. Then Mrs. Malik's eyes opened. I froze. They weren't the dull, half-focused eyes of someone waking from sedation. They were wide open, pupils dilated, staring straight at me, as if she'd been awake the entire time, waiting for me to notice. "Mrs. Malik," I whispered. "Can you hear me?" Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Just a faint hiss, like air leaking from somewhere deep in her throat, and then the lights flickered. All of them. Every bay in the ICU went dark for half a second, and when they came back, my patient's monitor was normal again. The heart rate, the oxygen, everything. Perfect. Except her eyes were still open. I called Dr. Hassan immediately. He arrived 5 minutes later, rubbing his eyes. I tried to explain what I saw, but he only frowned. "She can't open her eyes," he said quietly. "What checked her neuromuscular response yesterday? She's under full sedation." "But she did," I insisted. "And she looked right at me." He cut me off. "First night nerves. It happens." He adjusted her IV and turned to leave. But I saw it, a flash of something in his face. Fear, or maybe guilt. After he left, I sat by her bed, unable to shake the feeling that someone else was in the room. The air was heavier now. The hum of the machines felt deeper, slower. At 3:22 m, I heard it, a whisper. Faint, like breath against glass. "Don't let him near me." I turned sharply, scanning the empty room. The words had come from somewhere near her head. Mrs. Malik's eyes were closed again. I leaned closer, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then the monitor blinked. A single word appeared on the heart rate line, letters forming between the data spikes like static on an old TV. Ron. I didn't sleep the next day. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, that cold, aware stare. The next night, I told myself it had been a glitch, that exhaustion was playing tricks on me. But the second night was worse. I told myself I wouldn't come back. After the whisper, the word, RN, on the monitor, the open eyes that should have been sedated. I promised I'd find a reason to switch shifts. But I didn't. I came back anyway. Maybe it was duty, maybe denial, or maybe something else was pulling me back to that room. The ICU looked different that night. Not visibly. The same fluorescent lights, the same scent of antiseptic. But there was a tension in the air, a kind of invisible vibration under my skin. The staff was quieter too. Even the chatter near the nurses' station was muted. I noticed something strange when I clocked in. 2 beds were empty, covered with white sheets. Transfers. I asked a nurse named Samina. She didn't answer at first. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her mask. "No," she said finally. "They coded, both in Bay 3, back to back around dawn." She said it without emotion, but her eyes flicked toward Bay 4, then away again. Dr. Hassan was there again. He always was. He gave me a tired smile. "Back for round 2. I didn't want to leave you short-staffed." "Good." He checked his clipboard. "Mrs. Malik's still unresponsive. Everything is stable. Same sedation dosage. Nothing unusual in the readings." I wanted to tell him about the word I saw on the monitor, about the whisper, about how I felt something watching me, but when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. Instead, I nodded. "Good nurse," he said. "Let's keep it that way." At 11:47 p.m., Bay 4's lights dimmed, not out, just low as if someone had turned the brightness down on that one room only. The other bays glowed normally. The monitor beeped steadily. 78 BPM. 98% oxygen. No alarms, no warning. Still, I couldn't shake it. The air felt colder inside Bay 4. My breath fogged faintly when I exhaled. "Temperature sensors malfunction," I muttered. But when I checked the wall thermostat, it blinked a steady 22 degrees C normal. I glanced at Mrs. Malik. Her face was half shadowed by the glow of the heart monitor. I noticed something I hadn't before. Faint bruising along her neck, just beneath the intubation tube. They looked almost like fingerprints. The chart didn't mention them. At 12:03 a.m., I heard a click. The glass door to Bay 4 had shut on its own. I pressed the release button. Nothing. The sensor light didn't even flicker. The ICU was silent except for the machines. Then I heard it again, the whisper. This time, clearer. "Please, don't let him touch me again." I turned toward Mrs. Malik. Her eyes were open. Only this time, tears streamed down her face. I felt the blood drain from mine. Her ventilator hissed softly, steady. Her chest rose and fell in rhythm with the machine. But her gaze wasn't on me. She was looking over my shoulder. I turned. No one was there, just the reflection of the monitors in the glass wall. When I turned back, the tears were gone. Her face was dry. Her eyes were closed. At 2:11 a.m., the power surged. Every monitor blinked off for less than a second. When they came back, all patient names on the screens had changed, just for a heartbeat. Every single one said Farzena. Then they switched back. I stumbled backward, nearly knocking over the IV stand. My chest was tight, breath shallow. I wanted to run, to grab my bag and get the hell out, but my legs wouldn't move. The intercom crackled. "Aisha, come to the nurse's station," Samina's voice said. I bolted out of Bay 4. Samina was staring at the central monitor, the screen that showed all 8 patient feeds at once. "Look," she said, voice trembling. Bay 4's camera feed was black. Not off, black, like something was covering the lens. Then a flicker. For a split second, the feed came back, and I saw myself, standing inside the room. Only, I wasn't moving. The version of me on the screen stood at the foot of the bed, eyes fixed on the patient. No blinking, no motion. Then static. Samina gasped. "That's not." But before she could finish, all the lights went out. The entire ICU dropped into darkness. The emergency backup kicked in seconds later. Bathing everything in a dim red glow, the machines rebooted, one by one. When the power returned, Dr. Hassan was there, breathing heavily, sweating. "What the hell happened?" I asked. He ignored me, went straight into Bay 4. When he came out, his face was pale. "She's gone. Gone." Her heart stopped. 5 minutes ago. The logs show no alarms. He looked at me then, really looked, and said, almost in a whisper, "You were supposed to watch her." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out, because I had been watching her. The entire time, on the monitor, they moved Mrs. Malik's body to the morgue by 3 a.m. The other nurses avoided me, like whatever had happened might be contagious. I sat in the break room, shaking, trying to piece it together. That's when Samina came in, pale and trembling. She placed something on the table, a folded piece of hospital notepaper. "I found this," she whispered. "Inside Mrs. Malik's chart, dated a week before you started." I unfolded it. The handwriting was messy, desperate. "If she dies in Bay 4, she doesn't stay dead. Don't let Hassan near her." He made her this way. I didn't sleep that morning either. Because when I left the ICU at dawn, I passed the morgue doors. And from behind the metal, I swear I heard the ventilator hiss again. Just once, like a breath. I didn't remember the walk home that morning. Just the sound of the ventilator echoing in my head, and the faint smell of disinfectant on my hands. When I finally collapsed onto my bed, sunlight had already broken through the blinds, painting pale stripes across the wall, but sleep didn't come. Every time I drifted off, I saw Mrs. Malik's eyes, open, glassy, accusing. I'd wake with the taste of copper in my mouth and the thump of a monitor in my ears. By the third night, I told myself it was over. The patient was gone. There'd be no reason for anything strange to happen again. I'd finish my shift, prove to myself I wasn't losing it, and move on. Still, when the hospital loomed out of the dusk like a massive white block, I hesitated at the entrance. Inside, the corridors were busier than usual. A code had been called on the surgical floor, and the intercom repeated the same names over and over. I almost turned around. Almost. But then I saw Dr. Hassan at the nurse's station. He looked worse than ever, eyes sunken, skin gray from lack of sleep. "You're early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." He gave a humorless laugh. "None of us do. After nights like that." I waited for him to mention Mrs. Malik, but he didn't. He just scribbled something in a chart and said, "We have a new admission. Same bay. Bay 4, he nodded. "The room's been sanitized. We need to fill it." My throat went dry. "Are you sure that's smart?" His pen froze mid-stroke. "We don't choose where people crash, Nurse Aisha. We keep them alive wherever we can." He turned away before I could answer. The new admission was a young man, early 20s. Post-trauma from a car accident. His name was Taimur Rahman. The report said he'd been pulled from the wreck barely breathing, multiple fractures, head injury. When they wheeled him into Bay 4, his skin was still streaked with mud and blood. As we transferred him to the bed, the overhead light flickered, not off this time, but as if something passed between the bulb and us. Samina muttered a prayer under her breath. Once the ventilator hissed to life, the bay looked normal again. But I could feel it, the cold pocket in the air, the way sound seemed to die inside that glass box. I busied myself with the monitors, checking oxygen flow, charting numbers. Everything is normal. Everything is fine. Until I glanced at the heart rate display. For half a second, beneath the steady green waveform, faint white letters shimmered in the baseline. "Hello, Aisha," I blinked hard. "Gone." I looked around. Samina was adjusting the IV pump. She hadn't seen it. Dr. Hassan was at the far desk pretending to read a chart. My hands shook as I noted the vitals. Around 1 a.m., I went downstairs to deliver lab samples. The corridors were deserted, lights humming overhead. The morgue sat at the end of a long hallway, metal door gleaming faintly under emergency light. I'd passed it 100 times before without thinking. But that night, I stopped. The cold rolled out from the seam of the door like a slow exhale. On the small inspection window, someone had wiped away a patch of condensation, just enough to leave a shape that looked like a handprint. My breath caught. And then something tapped from the other side. 3 short knocks. I dropped the sample tray. Vials shattered across the floor. No sound after that. Just the hum of the freezer units. I forced a laugh. "Air pressure," I told myself aloud. Nothing more. But as I turned to leave, the motion sensor light flicked on, and a shadow moved across the inside of the morgue window. Slow and unmistakable, like someone walking past. When I got back upstairs, Bay 4's monitor alarms were flashing. Tamer's vitals spiked, heart rate 160, blood pressure erratic. I rushed in with Samina. "Seizure?" she asked. No, look at the eyes. His pupils were darting under closed lids, rapid and panicked. Then his mouth moved around the intubation tube, forcing muffled words. "Let me go." We froze. "Sedative," I said, reaching for the syringe. But before I could inject, the ventilator screen glitched. All numbers reset to 0, and in that blank moment, text appeared across the middle in ghostly gray, SGROS. The power flickered again, a flash of darkness. When the lights returned, Timer lay still, vitals flat. Dr. Hassan burst in seconds later. "What happened?" "Why, don't know. Everything just..." He cut me off, pushing past to the bed. "Get out! Doctor! Out!" I backed away, heart pounding, as he began chest compressions. From the corridor, through the glass, I saw his reflection in the monitor, only it wasn't his reflection. The figure behind him was taller, thinner, head tilted at an unnatural angle. When the defibrillator fired, the lights flared white, blinding, and then everything went still, flatline. Timer was gone. 2 deaths, same bay, 3 nights apart. I couldn't ignore it anymore. When the ward quieted around 4 a.m., I slipped into the staff office and logged into the records terminal. The hospital's system was slow, archaic. I searched for Farzana Malik. Her file was locked under administrator clearance. But there was a secondary note attached, dated 3 years earlier. I opened it. Subject: Experimental Sedation Protocol Project, E4 Lead, Dr. Hassan Observation. Patient exhibits preserved awareness during induced coma. Strong cortical activity despite full paralysis. Termination recommended. My stomach turned. The report ended with a line of handwriting scanned into the file. "She's still awake." Behind me, the office door clicked shut. I didn't have to turn around to know someone, or something, was there. The computer screen reflected a shape in the glass, a woman standing directly behind me, hair floating as if underwater. Her whisper brushed my ear. "Tell them what he did." I spun, but the room was empty. Then, from the corridor outside, the code alarm shrieked again. Code Blue Bay 4. I ran. The bed was empty, Tamer's body gone. The restraints dangled loose. The monitor pulsed erratically between 0 and impossible spikes. "Doctor?" Hassan stood in the corner, face blank, whispering something I couldn't make out. His hands were wet. Dark smears up to the wrists. "Where is he?" I shouted. He didn't answer. He just looked past me, toward the corridor window. I turned in time to see the reflection of Mrs. Malik standing outside the glass, her hospital gown dripping, her mouth forming silent words. "He made me this way." The hospital felt hollow after that night. Even the morning light that spilled through the ICU windows looked wrong, thin, washed out, like the color had been drained from it. I signed out of my shift without looking anyone in the eye. I didn't want to hear the rumors. Didn't want to explain why 2 patients had died under my watch. But as I left the ward, I saw something that stopped me. Dr. Hassan was sitting alone in the conference room, lights off, staring at his own reflection in the window. In front of him lay a stack of old folders tied with string. He didn't notice me standing there, or maybe he did and just didn't care. I waited until the evening shift started, then came back through the side entrance with my badge. Security never looked twice at a uniform. The folders were still on the conference table, stamped across the top of each. Inside were photocopied EG readouts, handwritten notes, and a list of 6 names, all female. Mrs. Farzana Malik was number 4. Next to her name, someone had written in pen, "Responsive under total blockade." My stomach turned as I read further. The notes described a new sedative protocol designed to keep trauma patients conscious but pain-free, allowing the mind to witness its own survival. But the results were horrific. The patients could see and hear, but couldn't move. Half of them went into cardiac arrest from sheer panic. The last page was assigned authorization, Dr. Hassan. Below his name, a smaller red stamp tam kel by HEH. I should have gone home. Instead, I walked straight to the ICU. Bay 4's door was sealed with a maintenance sign. The glass was dark behind the reflection of the hallway lights. Yet the monitor inside was on. A faint green line pulsed in the darkness. Steady. Patient. I pressed my hand against the glass. The chill burned. A whisper formed just beneath the sound of the ventilator. He's still doing it. Then, softly, the heart rate monitor shifted from 78 BPM to 3 distinct spikes. ... I froze. Morse code. It is spelled HELP. I found Dr. Hassan in his office, lights low, a half-empty bottle of antiseptic on the desk. "You experimented on her," I said. He looked up slowly. "You shouldn't have read those files. She was awake the whole time." "You knew," she volunteered. "No one volunteers to be trapped in their own body." His eyes were bloodshot, voice shaking. "You think I wanted this? She was dying!" "We found a way to keep consciousness alive when the body gives up. We just didn't know what else would come through." "What came through?" He didn't answer. His gaze drifted toward Bay 4. "It's not her anymore." Later, while he was called to an emergency on another floor, I took the elevator down to archives. The smell of dust and old paper clung to everything. I found a box labeled E4RAUDO-LOGS. Inside were several small digital recorders, each tagged with dates. I played the first one. Subject 4 shows consistent REM during induced paralysis. Reports of visual hallucination before intubation, a woman in white standing at her bedside. EG spikes correspond with whispering heard on monitors. The staff instructed us to maintain our distance after midnight. The next recording was worse. "I can't move. Please stop. Please, I'm still here." My breath hitched. Mrs. Malik hadn't just been a patient. She'd been part of the staff before the trial. When I turned off the recorder, I noticed frost forming along the metal shelves. The temperature dropped so fast my breath clouded the air. From the far end of the aisle, something scraped against the floor. Slow steps. Bare feet on tile. I backed away, clutching the recorder. The overhead light flickered once, twice. Then every bulb burst in a single crack. In the darkness, a voice right next to my ear. "Finish what he started." By the time I reached the ICU again, alarms were blaring. The night staff crowded around Bay 4. Through the glass, the new patient, the empty bed that had been closed for maintenance, was occupied again. Mrs. Malik lay there, eyes open, breathing evenly. But she'd been dead for 2 nights. Dr. Hassan was on his knees beside the bed, whispering her name over and over. When he looked up, his face was wet with tears. "She came back," he said. "She always comes back." The overhead lights dimmed to red emergency mode. Every monitor in the ward beeped in the same rhythm, matching Bay 4's pulse. I stepped inside the glass room, feeling the temperature drop. Mrs. Malik's head turned slightly toward me, vertebrae cracking. Her voice came out through the ventilator tubing. A mix of breath and static. "You can end it." "How?" She stared at the sedation pump. The dosage readout flashed erratically between numbers. Then she whispered, "Stop him." I reached for the control just as Dr. Hassan lunged, grabbing my wrist. "You don't understand. She's keeping them alive!" Every soul that dies in this ward, she holds them here. The monitors screamed, glass shattered inward. For a heartbeat, I saw them. Dozens of figures crowding the room. Translucent and flickering, their faces frozen in silent terror. Hassan screamed as the ventilator tubing coiled around his neck like a serpent. I pulled the power cable from the wall. Everything went dark. When the emergency generators kicked back on, Bay 4 was empty. No patients. No Hassan. Just the faint outline of a hand burned into the glass from inside. The system log showed one final note before the monitors went offline. E4 terminated. Subject released. Morning came with an eerie calm. The ICU hummed as if nothing had happened. Bay 4 was spotless. No sign of shattered glass, no residue, no fingerprints. Maintenance said they'd cleaned up an electrical fault. But I knew better. The air still carried that metallic taste of ozone and blood. Dr. Hassan's office was sealed. His badge had been deactivated overnight. Officially, he was on leave. Unofficially, he'd vanished. When the hospital administration questioned me, I told them fragments. How equipment malfunctioned, how a patient coded. I didn't mention Mrs. Malik's voice, or the frost, or the things I'd seen reflected in the ICU monitors. They nodded, writing polite lies into their reports. Power fluctuation. System error. Unexplained data corruption. But as I was leaving, one of the IT techs pulled me aside. He looked pale, jittery. "You were on shift that night, right?" he whispered. "Yeah." He handed me a flash drive. The system backed itself up at Joe 3:10. You need to see this before they wipe it. At home, I loaded the footage on my laptop. It showed the ICU in grainy black and white. Timestamp. 06:42 a.m. Dr. Hassan stood beside Bay 4, hand on the glass. Then, from the bed, a shape sat up. Not human. A distortion, as if the pixels themselves were trying to take form. It reached out and touched his chest. For 3 full seconds, the monitors across the ward flatlined. Then a flicker, and Hassan was gone. The bed was empty again. On the corner of the screen, the system log flickered. Transfer complete. Subject redefined. 2 nights later, I got called in unexpectedly. Short staff again. When I entered the ICU, I felt it. That same icy undercurrent, like the air had a heartbeat. I checked the patient list. Room assignments had shifted. Bay 4 was open again. New patient listed as male 47, cardiac arrest. When I went inside, I froze. The man on the bed had Dr. Hassan's face. Alive, breathing. But eyes blank, unfocused. His monitor displayed one word in blocky green letters, HOST. The rest of the staff didn't see it. To them, he was just another unresponsive patient. But every time I passed his room, the heart monitor spiked to match my pulse. That night, during rounds, I heard his voice through the ventilator. Soft. Broken. "Help me?" And then, underneath his words, hers, "Mrs. Malik, you freed me once." Don't fail him. I looked at the sedation bundle, same model. It was the same motto. Same flicker of red light. I knew what she wanted. I unplugged it. The alarm screamed again, echoing through the ICU. Every monitor went black except Bay 4's. For a heartbeat, the screen showed both of them, Hassan and Mrs. Malik, standing side by side, watching me. Then the display faded to static, and finally silence. A week later, the hospital announced the closure of experimental ward E4 due to safety concerns. Most of the staff who'd been there that night quit within a month. I stayed, maybe out of guilt. Maybe because part of me couldn't leave what I'd seen behind. But sometimes, when I pass Bay 4, now repurposed as storage, the monitor light still blinks faintly through the dust. A heartbeat with no patient attached. That night was supposed to be my first step into a lifelong career of saving people. Instead, it showed me how thin the line is between medicine and madness, between saving a life and trapping a soul. Dr. Hassan believed he could cheat death by preserving consciousness beyond the body. He didn't realize he was opening a door that wouldn't close. Mrs. Malik was the first to step through it, and in the end, she pulled him through as well, to a place where the living and the dead exist side by side, inside machines designed only for healing. I still work in the ICU. I still hear the ventilators, the monitors, the endless hum of life suspended by wires. But every now and then, at 3:17 a.m., one monitor flashes the same message that ended that night. Subject released. And for just a second, I swear, the heartbeat that follows isn't human.